Hello there and welcome to the channel. My name's Annie and this is my creative detour. I hope you're having a great week. Today we're continuing on working with my favourites journal for 2025 and 2026, and I'm going to be showing you, I put some pages into it and I've worked out where I'm going to be putting all of my favourites from last year. So we'll have a little bit of a flick through that at the end of the video, and I'll show you what my plans are and what sort of pages I put into it and how I put the pages in. But today we're going on with making some pages for my journal. Now, I mentioned to you last week that I wanted to do something a little bit different. I didn't want to just have all book pages or magazine pages or whatever. I wanted to make some faux rice paper. And you can see here it scrunches up and it's lovely and tactile. And I have used some interesting products. So let me get my resources out and I'll show you how I made it. I also will do some on camera with you and we'll make some together. I'm also going to run through some of the things that I learned and some of the things that I would do differently. So let's get set up and get started. Okay, so let's have a little look at the ones that I've made, and you can see that this one I have stamped all over it. This is similar to the video that I did on making wallpaper, except that this is just one layer of some sort of material, whereas the wallpaper I layered it up over and over and over and made it much thicker and more substantial, and obviously then it wasn't transparent. But for this one, what I did was I used some of my drafting trace. Now, I used to use this when I was working as a design architectural lecturer or a designer, when I was teaching design or working drawings or perspective drawings, and this is called Yellowtrace. So it's like tracing paper. It's not overly thick, but it's quite sturdy and it tears quite easily. I'll tear a piece off and show you. So it tears across the roll really easily, and we would use this to put over our drawing. Let's say we had a perspective drawing and you then could trace over something, and then you could continue to design and ideate on all these little pieces of paper and lay them over the top of each other. And as you can see through it really easily to continue to design on top of it. So I have this roll that I've had for years, and I probably am never going to get to the end of it. Now, I will put a link below. You tend to buy this from a art supply place. It's quite expensive, and that's why I'm using it, because I have it. I didn't go out and purchase it. But it's really great for making faux rice paper. Now, what I did was I stamped onto the trace with some VersaFine, because I probably should have used StazOn, but I didn't want to use StazOn because I didn't want to stain all of my stamps completely. I used VersaFine, and then what I did was I heat set it with some clear embossing powder and set the ink. And then I painted on a slightly diluted down Mod Podge. And it's the matte finish on the Mod Podge that I use. Then once it was dry, I sewed around it. Now, this one worked really well, and you can see that it is translucent, and you can definitely see through it, but it's not transparent. The next one that I did was I used some tissue paper out of some packaging. Now, this packaging, it came out of, you can see it's from Black, Melbourne, and Black is a menswear shoes and clothing brand here in Australia. And this came out of a shoebox that my husband got some new shoes, and I kept the tissue paper. Now, it's better quality tissue paper, So once it's painted with the Mod Podge, it's not overly translucent. It's reasonably opaque, but it's still, you can still see through it a little bit. Here we have another one, and you can see that it is tissue paper, and this one came from some packaging at work, and you can see that once again I stamped on it, and I used VersaFine, and this one I left overnight to dry and it was fine. This one here, I wanted to get on with making some things, so I had to heat set it to get it to dry. Here you can see I've done another one, and I've heat set it with some clear embossing powder. Now, where I got the bug for making this was from Maggie, from Journaling with Maggie. So thank you, Maggie, for your inspiration. I was watching her video, and I'll tell you the name of her video. I was watching Maggie's video on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer just before Christmas, and she was putting her pages in her journal, and she was showing her faux rice paper, and I'd not made it, but I'd made the wallpaper, and I loved making the wallpaper. And so I thought, oh, I've got to have a go at that, and I'd like to do some stamping on it. As you can see, I went down the rabbit hole of doing some stamping. But before I started stamping, I had a play to see what sort of results I'd get. Maggie made some red, green and white faux rice paper, and she shows it on her video of putting the pages into her journal, as I mentioned. So I started with making a red one. My red tissue paper was very thick, and so you can see that it's my hand's behind it, but this is reasonably opaque. It's not very translucent. Now she had a green one. Now this one worked quite a bit better. Because it's a dark colour, it's not overly translucent, but you can still see my hand through it, and I love the texture of it. I love that you can scrunch it up, and it's quite tactile, and I will use this to put into journals, but also onto clusters. Now, while I did have some tissue paper out, I thought to myself, I will back some of them with dried tea bags, and that's where I start to build up my faux wallpaper. And some of you will have watched that video of how I make the faux wallpaper. Now, if I continue to layer this up with a few more layers of tea bag, and you can see that some are on there, it would become a lot sturdier and stronger and thicker and more robust, like the wallpaper. So it's a similar process. So what I had the most success out of for transparency was serviettes. Here we have a serviette. You can see that it's quite translucent. My hand's behind it. It's very thin, and it is matte on one side because the Mod Podge is a matte finish, but on the side where it sits onto the plastic, it goes shiny. Now, this was where I came a little bit undone. I've seen on some other people's videos that they use the plastic bag out of a cereal box. So once you've finished eating your cereal, you keep the plastic bag and you open it up and you use it as a drop sheet. Well, I didn't have that. We're not big cereal eaters. I did have some of this plastic here. Now, I'm sorry, this will be really shiny on the camera, but this is what I ended up using, and I'll move it out now that you've seen it. But this is where I think I came a little bit unstuck, because I think what happened was when I was trying to lift it off, you can see that I've got a darker blob here, and you can see that there's holes in it. And that's because it was really well stuck to that plastic. So I need to find myself a better drop sheet, and one that it's not going to stick to. Now, I tore this when I was working it with the paintbrush. I was painting on the Mod Podge, and when you separate your serviette, the fibers become very thin. And you can see here, I'll pull this apart. I'm going to separate that. And this is a 3-ply serviette. So we've got 1 layer, 2 layers, and the 3rd layer. When you separate it, it obviously becomes very thin, and you just use this sheet here. And when I was painting this with the Mod Podge, it was tearing. I was being too rough with it, and I needed a softer brush. Maybe use a better piece of plastic than I was using, maybe something a little bit more non-stick. But what I started doing was I pushed up the edges. Now I'm not sure whether you can see that they're all irregular. And I will show you when we do one together that I pushed the edges up to make it easier to pull it off. So separate your serviette just like this and get your layer that you're going to use and put it onto your plastic drop sheet, and then you'll be able to coat it. So it gave a really good example of some translucent faux rice paper, and I'm really happy with it, but there are quite a few holes in it, and I'm going to have to be quite selective with what I do with this page. And like I said, I tore it when I was brushing it, so I had to patch it with a piece of tissue paper that I had hanging around, and I'll be able to make that work when I use it. The other one that I used, now this one here, you possibly won't be able to see it very well on the camera, but it is the top layer of this serviette, and it's quite translucent. So I got a very good sample from that, but let's have a look at the pattern. So there's my serviette. I separated just the top layer, and I ended up with this sample. So there were my samples and the things that I learned. You can see that along this edge here I had a similar problem where it was tearing when I was trying to lift it off of the plastic sheet. So I am going to have to get my husband to finish off a box of cereal so that I can get a few cereal wrappers. And I might need to hit up my daughter from my grandchildren's cereal wrappers as well. So they're the things that I learned. I learned that it'll be difficult to pull off of the plastic drop sheet. I also found that if I didn't put enough on at the beginning, then I got these white patches. So I didn't coat the paper enough for it to totally soak in. So you can see those white blobs on it. That's where I didn't put enough of a coating of the Mod Podge onto it. Now, you could use Mod Podge, you could use PVA glue as well. So let's get set up and I'll show you how I made the pages that I actually are going to put into the journal, because I did do a few different things with that. So let's put that to the side, and we're going to work on doing one like this one and one like this one. So because I don't want to use that glossy drop sheet, I'm going to just use some Glad Bake because it's not as reflective on the camera. So that will be a little bit better for videoing. So you can see that I've pulled a piece of my Yellowtrace off. I'm just going to stamp it with VersaFine, but I am going to heat set it with some clear embossing powder. And the stamp set I'm going to use is from All & Create, and it's number 903, and it's Alstroemeria. And I think that's how you say it. Now, because I'm going to be using embossing powder, I'm going to put an anti-static powder on this. This is the first time I've actually used this stamp. I got this one in a mystery box from All & Create. I did a video on that actually, if you would like to watch it. It's in my haul video playlist. I'm not worried about it being a perfect stamp. I'm okay with it being average. That's pretty good. And we'll load up this one. So you can see I'm doing it so that I'm thinking about putting this into a journal. So I'm making so that it reads on a journal page. That's good. And then we have a little sentiment that says, "Go where your dreams take you." And we'll stamp that in there and there. Now I'm going to hit that with the powder fairly quickly. So I'm just going to tip the powder over it. I'm going to have to buy myself a little bit more powder at some stage because I use so much of this clear one. So just make sure that you get it all over it. I'll do the other side. There we go. Now I'm going to heat set this and clean my stamps and I'll be back. Okay, I'm back and I'm happy with that. You can see that it is all glossy because it's got clear embossing powder on it. But because of the colour of the yellow, it's sort of pulled the intensity of the black back a little bit and it's not as dark as what it was. And I've got really good clarity of the writing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go on to the next one and show you how to do this one. And this one's a little bit different. I didn't stamp this. I used a different technique to get a pattern onto here. So let's do this one and then we'll coat them together at the same time with our Mod Podge once this is complete. So this one here, as I said, I did it differently. I used the stencil from All and Create and it's number 147 and it's called Coffee Stains. Now, I thought to myself when I was doing it and I was playing with the different materials, I thought, my Mod Podge is water soluble, which means that if I put some staining of some sort on in alcohol, then it's not going to smudge. So what I did was I pulled out some of my alcohol markers, and I've got them here, and I have got Couture Creations here in Australia. They're an Australian brand, alcohol markers, but you could use any alcohol markers, and all I did was I traced around the patterning in different colours and filled in the spaces with my alcohol marker. And so it was really easy to do, and it left the stencil shape onto the paper. Now this is tissue paper, so it's going to absorb it and bleed a little bit. It's quite absorbent. So just take your time, and it means that you could use any stencil that you have and create a pattern from it. Now I purposely picked something that didn't matter if it bled a little bit, like coffee stains. Picked out some coffee coloured markers. I did find that I had to clean this stencil really well afterwards though, because it did mark the stencil quite a bit. So as you can see, I'm just going to go ahead and mark up the rest of this tissue paper. I'll probably speed the video up a little bit, but I'll continue on and finish doing my coffee circles. Okay, I'm back and I've finished all of that marking with my alcohol markers. I did tear it a little bit, but that'll be okay. It'll probably fix when I glue it. I'm going to just let that completely dry, and I'll do the other one while I'm waiting. And you can see that I've got some Mod Podge here, and I've diluted it. I've got it around about 2/3 Mod Podge, 1/3 water. And I've just mixed that really well, and I'm just going to coat it. Now, the tracing paper will want to curl a little bit, but what I learned from doing the other ones is that you need to do a really good coating on it. The better the first coat, the more translucent it is. So don't be afraid to put quite a bit on. I found that if I was being a little bit frugal, then that's when I got those white blobs. So this corner is curling, so let's just coat that again, coat it down. And I'm just going to smooth it out so that it's fairly homogeneous. And I'm just going to set that aside and let that dry. And now we'll do the alcohol one. Alright, now I've got a few tears in this one, which is fine. We'll just try and patch it. And this tissue paper, it's got a little bit of a sheen on one side, and then it's matte on the other. Now if I'd put the alcohol marker onto the matte side, it possibly would have ran and bled a little bit more. I didn't want it to do that. I wanted the circles to look like coffee circles. Now you can see that one of the colours, this colour here, it is smudging a little bit, but I don't think that matters because it is a coffee stain after all. So I think just selecting a stencil that lends itself to the process is good. Okay, I've got this set aside to dry, but I did just want to point out to you one of the things that I found, that if you push your tissue paper when it's wet and push it the edge up a little bit, then it does seem to be easier to get it off. Maybe just play with that. Use your wet brush with the Mod Podge on and just push up the edges so that they lift a little bit easier. So I'm going to let this dry. I'll put it to the side, I'll clean up, and I'll come back and I'll show you what I've put into my journals and where the pages go. Okay, I've pulled out my favourites journal, and last week I mentioned that I wanted to put some pages into this and do something a little bit different, and I had in my mind that I wanted to make some of those faux rice paper pages. So that's what we've just done, but let's put some now into the journal and I'll show you what I've done. I actually have turned it into a traveller's notebook style, and that's because I want to be able to put different types of pages in it if I'm playing and experimenting with constructing different page bases. I'm thinking about doing some patchwork pages, and I'm thinking about doing more fabric style pages. So if I'd stitched it in, I wouldn't be able to then put some in retrospectively. So I have made just 2 signatures, and we'll have a little bit of a flick through. And I haven't finished any pages. I've just put some of my favourite things into it, and I'll build the pages as I feel like playing. So you can see that I have made a cover out of a piece of scrapbook paper. I think that this is graphic 45. I've just made a little folio cover and with some pockets in it so that I can dump some things into it. And then we have our first page, and it's just a book page. And you can see that I have just pinned in the things that I want to put on different pages. So I'm going to build up this page with our opera singer here from my frames. Here I'm going to put down one of my flip downs that I did. And then we have, you can see, one of our faux rice paper pages. I have a pocket here that I've got space to put something in, and you can see that I've done a little bit of stitching, and I'm not sure whether you can see it, but I did actually stitch around these rice paper pages. It has a stitch of gold around it just to make the edges a little bit sturdier and less likely to tear. And I've done a little bit of stitching just in some things. I've put in a fabric sample. Now I've got something that I've got a plan for doing on this down the track. So I wanted to put a piece of fabric in both signatures. There's our alcohol marker, faux rice paper, and you can see the stitching on that really easily. Just another page with a pocket, and there's one of our postcards. I've got a little piece of map and some architectural book pages. And we have Morton Morris. He is from a New Zealand chocolate bar wrapper, and there's a video on that under tags. And then we have some of our faux stamps and one of our magnets, magnet bookmarks, and another stamp. And then we have our tag of our train conductor. So he looks pretty good there, doesn't he? And then our faux rice paper again, and some space to put some projects in for this year. Then lastly, one of our postcards. It looks lovely against that, doesn't it? And then the second signature, our Wild at Heart mini journal that can tear and that can be broken up into 4 journaling spots. So there is a video on that, and that's in our Junk Journal Gestures playlist. Now, I do want to chat about that. I created a Junk Journal Gestures hashtag, and I created it probably about May last year. I created hashtag Junk Journal Gestures, and the purpose of it was for me to have somewhere where I can put any kind of junk journal ephemera projects into that hashtag, and then you can have a look at it. But it's also there for you as well. If you make any kind of junk journal ephemera, please feel free to add it to hashtag Junk Journal Gestures. So they're little gestures that you put into a junk journal, and they're smallish projects. It just means that everybody can have a look at them. So once again, it's hashtag Junk Journal Gestures. Please put in your small projects of little gestures that you put into your junk journal. And you'll see all of mine in there as well. Now we have another page of our faux rice paper, and it looks quite nice in the journal, and it's nice because it breaks up the textural feeling when you're flipping the pages from paper to something else. And here's the yellow tracing paper one. We've got some music paper and another tag. This one's cute. It's of a lady singing la 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 la, sitting on a branch. She's singing with a bird, and says, "No journey is too great if you find what you seek." And then I've got another tag here, and once again a piece of fabric for something that I'm thinking of down the track. We've got one of our tea bag samples. I've got another magnetic tag flip out with a bug on it, and a New Zealand stamp, and a postcard, an altered antique postcard. And this was sent to Minnie McNamara, and I have done a video on this, and this is about altering old antique postcards and reviving them. And Minnie, actually, I've since found out, is my great-great-grandmother. So there you go. For those of you that were wondering, Selena, I think, might have been wanting to know who she was. So there you go, Selena. She's my great-great-grandmother. We've got our 70s vibe tag in here, and then a spare page, and then another tag at the back. So there we go. There's the beginnings of my favourites journal. And it's a bit of an ideas journal, but it's not as big as an ideas journal. It's just going to have a selection of my favourite projects in it. and I'm going to add to that throughout the year and build up the pages. And you can see in the front cover in the pocket I have one of the envelopes that I did in December. So there we go. There's the examples of my faux rice paper that I did this morning, and they're still drying, so I won't be able to show you those, but they're essentially the same as those. I'll peel them off once they're dry, and I'll cut them to size and stitch around the edge. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed seeing my hits and misses on my faux rice paper. Also, I hope you enjoyed having a little bit of a look through my favourites journal. So thank you, Maggie, for the inspiration. I really appreciate it. Head on over to Maggie's channel. I'll have the link below showing you the video that inspired me to go down this rabbit hole, and give her some love. She's got some great projects on the go all the time, and she's so lovely to listen to and to watch. So I hope that you enjoy checking out her channel. Also, like I said, if you'd like to post some of your projects that you're working on, any kind of junk journal ephemera project, so small gestures that you put into your journals, please feel free to add them to my hashtag. I'll leave the link below for you to put your videos in there, and then we can all share some of our ideas. Okay, that's all for me today. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. That would be lovely. And I hope you're all having a wonderful week, finding an opportunity to make something fun and new. And I will see you all very soon with another project. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. I really appreciate it. Bye for now.